Hello, my name is Eleanor Voss. For over 30 years, I served as the Deputy Director of Classified Archives for the FBI. In my line of work, you learn that the truth isn't found in what people say, but in the patterns they leave behind, the small, physical details that don't quite align with the story they are trying to sell you. I am sharing this account today because silence is often the greatest ally of a predator. I recently experienced an attempt on my own autonomy, a calculated move by someone within my own family to silence me and seize what I have spent a lifetime building. They thought I was a vulnerable woman at the end of her story. They were mistaken. I'm telling you this not just as a warning, but as a lesson. Observation is a form of power. Here is exactly what happened when they tried to lock me away. My son David had gone to Tokyo. 12 days, a conference of some sort. Miranda arranged his trip, so I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about the timing. The day he left, she came to the house with a smile like a department store and told me the East Wing needed emergency repairs. Asbestos, she said. Nothing to worry about, she said. 1 week at the most. She had booked me a room at Pristine Wellness Retreat and Senior Living. Have you heard of it? No, you wouldn't have. It's been closed for some time now. Court order. Eleanor pauses to let that land. The lobby smelled of lavender and money, which are not always the same smell, but at Pristine Wellness were indistinguishable. Fresh lilies on the reception desk. Vivaldi through hidden speakers. A coordinator who spoke about me, to Miranda's face, as though I were a piece of luggage they were checking in. I allowed all of this. I sat in the wheelchair I did not need. Miranda had brought one, which told me something, and I looked at the ceiling. The security camera near the east corridor had a dead angle. There was a chemical undertone beneath the lavender. Not cleaning product. Not candle. Something pharmaceutical, slow release, airborne. And the facilities director, a Dr. Harlan Sterling, had a handshake that was exactly 2 beats too warm. I know. You're thinking, how do you know a handshake is 2 beats too warm? You know, because you've spent 3 decades shaking the hands of people who were performing sincerity rather than feeling it. There is a difference. It's mostly in the thumb. Rose glances at her own hands. I said very little. Miranda said a great deal. She told Sterling I'd left the gas on twice. That I'd had episodes of confusion. That the family was worried sick. All of it was invented. Every word, and she said it with such tender sorrow that I almost admired her. Almost. In my bag, beneath a crossword magazine, I pressed record. The room was beautiful. This is important. No one believes they are being imprisoned somewhere beautiful. It is, as a psychological strategy, quite elegant. I gave Sterling credit for it briefly before I filed it away under evidence of premeditation. There was a card on the nightstand. Drive. Sterling's handwriting neat, careful. We've prepared an evening wellness tea. A pristine tradition. Your nurse will bring it at 8 p.m. 3 exclamation points. Anyone who uses 3 exclamation points on a medical facility note card is either very cheerful or very guilty. Sterling did not strike me as particularly cheerful. Eleanor opens her leather notebook to show Rose a page dense with small, precise handwriting. Rose can't read the shorthand, but she can see the neat columns, the circled words, the dates running down the left margin like a ledger. I have kept a notebook this way since 1991. FBI habit. You write down what you observe, not what you feel about it, not what you think it means, just what you observe. Time, location, detail. The interpretation comes later. You'd be surprised how many people fail to separate those two things and how much it costs them. At 802, 2 minutes late, which told me the nurse had checked something before coming in. She arrived, dark hair, young. The particular alertness of someone who is looking at the room rather than the patient. I noted that. I noted everything. I received the tea. I thanked her warmly. I poured a 1/4 inch into a specimen jar I'd brought. Don't look at me like that. I always travel with specimen jars. Or at least I do when I expect to be poisoned, and I gave the rest to the fern. Rose stares. By 6 in the morning, 2 of its leaves had gone yellow. Benzodiazepine derivative, we later confirmed. Slow acting. The sort of thing that, taken daily over 6 weeks, would produce symptoms quite consistent with early-stage cognitive decline. Confusion, emotional instability, impaired short-term memory. Documented daily by the medical staff. Presented, in due course, to a probate court. Now this is the part I want you to understand, because it is the part that is relevant to your grandmother. The strategy works because it's patient. They don't need you to collapse. They need you to seem unreliable. One small incident at a time. The gas left on. A conversation you don't remember having. A door you apparently left open. Each one trivial. Collectively, devastating. And the terrible thing, the truly clever thing, is that if the drug is working, you start to doubt yourself. You start to fill in the gaps they've created with your own uncertainty. I had 31 years of training in not filling in gaps someone else had made for me. Your grandmother, perhaps, has not. But that is what we are here for. She refills Rose's tea. Her own she has not touched since the first sip. The nurse's name was Sarah Chen. She was 29, trilingual, graduated top of her nursing program, and had absolutely no business working at a mid-tier memory care facility in Westchester County. I knew this by the end of day 1. She was too observant. She watched Sterling the way you watch someone you are building a case against. Her hands, when she handled the medication cart, moved with the particular carefulness of someone who was documenting rather than just working. And she lingered. On the 4th evening, she set the tea down, looked at the fern. 2 more leaves had gone. I hadn't removed them. And she said, very quietly, the fern's looking poorly. I looked at her. Not the look I'd been performing for Sterling. A real one. It is, I said. I've been giving it something that doesn't agree with it. She sat down. It was not visiting hours. Eleanor smiles, not warmly. Exactly. More like someone who has just recalled a particularly satisfying move on a chessboard. She told me she was former Financial Crimes Division, New York Attorney General's office. 4 years. She'd gone undercover. Well, not undercover precisely, but embedded at Pristine Wellness because 3 families had filed complaints about unexplained asset transfers. She didn't have enough to move on Sterling yet. I told her 31 years, FBI Records Management, Deputy Director of Classified Archives, retired 2019. I told her my daughter-in-law was attempting to have me declared legally incompetent in order to seize control of the Voss Family Foundation. I told her I'd been collecting evidence since I arrived. She asked how much I had. 70 specimens. 4 audio recordings. A photograph of Sterling's calendar that I'd taken through his window when the curtain blew open. I'd been waiting 3 days for the wind to cooperate. A contemporaneous written record of every fabricated incident. She had copies of 2 Shell Company wire transfers and a name Holloway Voss Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware 6 weeks earlier. Holloway was Miranda's maiden name. Rose is very still. I opened my notebook to a clean page. We had a great deal to discuss. The document was 16 pages. Sarah found it in the facility's administrative server during a routine backup. A task no one had thought to restrict her from, because no one had imagined a nurse who understood what she was looking at. Miranda had identified 14 items from the Voss estate: a Tiffany lamp, 3 first editions, the Beacon Hill property, trust accounts for the grandchildren, all to be transferred to Holloway Voss Holdings the moment a court declared me incompetent. In exchange she would pay Sterling's facility expansion debt, $1.2 million. The court hearing was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. Eleanor places her cup down with the small precise sound of a decision being made. I want you to understand, because this is the part that people always find difficult to believe, that Miranda was not stupid. She was, in fact, quite intelligent. The plan was elegant. The timing was careful. She had documentation, a credentialed physician, 6 weeks of incident reports. From the outside, it would have looked very convincing. I have spent my career building things that are watertight from the inside rather than convincing from the outside. There is a difference. We worked through the night, Sarah and I. I'm not being dramatic, it was genuinely all night. She had a small camera she'd been using to document Sterling's medication irregularities. We discussed what I used to call, internally, a full-room confession. The Bureau used it twice in 30 years. Both times, the subject was in a position of total perceived control. Both times, that perception lasted until the moment it didn't. The key is that you let them build the stage. You let them arrange the furniture and write the script and believe, completely, that they are the director. And then at the moment of their choosing, which you have calculated in advance will also be the most damaging possible moment for them, you change the audience. She looks at Rose steadily. Miranda was planning a video call. David, from Tokyo, the foundation's attorney, a representative of the board, just as a courtesy, she said. She would demonstrate my confusion. I would sign the papers. It would be over in an hour. I called the board chair myself. At 3 in the morning, Thursday. Her name is Constance Abramowitz, 20 years on the board, a woman with the particular combination of intelligence and composure that comes from having outlasted 4 different foundation directors. I sent her the audio recordings, the specimen analysis. Sarah had a contact at a private laboratory, and the 16-page document. I also sent everything to the Westchester County District Attorney's Office and to the New York Attorney General's Financial Crimes Division. Sarah knew people there. Then I went to sleep. You cannot do good work on no sleep. Another bureau lesson. The conference room had been arranged with attention to detail. My chair was lower than everyone else's, a small thing, but telling. The kind of detail a confident person with a theater background would think of and a genuinely confident person would not need. Sterling's logo was visible and centered on the wall behind him. Miranda wore gray, the color of reluctant necessity. She kissed me on the cheek, said it was just a formality, said she was so glad I was feeling well enough for this. Eleanor's expression does not change, but something in it sharpens. On the laptop, David, from Tokyo, looking pale and confused. The attorney and Constance Abramowitz, who had received my 3 a.m. package and whose face held the particular blankness of someone who is extremely angry and exercising extraordinary restraint. She and I had agreed, the night before, that she would say very little until the moment I indicated. Sterling began. He was good, I'll give him that. Measured, clinical, warm. He walked through the incident reports, the documentation, the pharmacological support for his assessment. He said the tea was a gentle herbal supplement for sleep and anxiety. He said the competency evaluation was in the best interests of the family. And then 23 minutes in, which is almost exactly when I'd predicted he made his mistake, he reached for a document and said to Miranda, just slightly too quietly, just slightly as though I weren't in the room, the competency evaluations should hold up. We have 7 weeks of documentation and the pharmacological profile is consistent with. He stopped. I was smiling at him. Please continue. Drive, Sterling, I said. The pharmacological profile is consistent with what, exactly? Silence. Eleanor says, can be the loudest thing in a room. For a moment, the conference room at Pristine Wellness was very loud indeed. I placed my recorder on the table. Then I looked at the smoke detector above Miranda's right shoulder where Sarah's camera had been transmitting, live, for 26 minutes. I said, for anyone joining us remotely, and I'm told we have rather a larger audience than originally planned. What you've just heard is Drive. Sterling confirming the pharmacological manipulation documented in specimens I collected over 6 days, independently analyzed. The full evidence package has already been transmitted to the Foundation Board of Directors, to the New York Attorney General's Financial Crimes Division, and to the Westchester County District Attorney's Office. Miranda stood up so quickly her chair fell over. She said, you have no idea what you're. I said, sit down, Miranda. Eleanor pauses for a moment. Rose realizes she has been holding her breath. I used, in that moment, a voice I have never used at a family dinner or birthday party. The voice from the archive. I used it twice in 31 years and both times the person across from me sat down immediately. Miranda sat down. From outside the conference room, footsteps. More than one pair. Sarah had given the DA's office a 4-hour window and they had, to their credit, arrived within it. It took 40 minutes to complete. Sterling's attorney arrived 11 minutes in and was immediately informed that his client had already confirmed the central allegation. In front of 7 witnesses and 1 live streaming camera. Miranda said very little after the police arrived. She sat very straight and looked at the wall, which I thought was probably the most dignified response available to her, and I'll acknowledge it required a certain amount of composure. When it was over, I sat alone in the conference room for a moment. A teacup had fallen from the table during the confusion. Miranda's elbow, I think, and the tea had spread across the carpet in a shape that reminded me, for some reason, of a map. David was already on the phone from Tokyo. Shaken. He kept saying, "I should have known. I should have known." I said, "You weren't looking for it." "I was." "That is the difference." And then Sarah and I walked out through the lobby past the Vivaldi and the crystal vase and the coordinator, who was speaking very urgently into a telephone, and the doors slid open and it was a cold, bright October morning. The kind of morning that feels like an argument against despair. Sarah asked what happened now. I told her now we go back to work. Not for the bureau. Something different. There are other families, other residents of places like this one. People who needed someone paying attention.